a lot of people come up to me afterwards and said, I never really thought about what a difference I might be making,
Mm.
right? They're so busy focusing on the operation, focusing on their employees who are driving them crazy, focusing on marketing, blaming the franchisor, that they don't really think much about themselves. I mean, forget franchising. How about in any discipline? How often are all of us throughout the day thinking, wow, things are happening a certain way. I wonder what I can do to clear my head, to improve my mindset. We're too busy looking at our circumstances and looking at what we have to do, as opposed to also, hey, how do I have to think? What thoughts and biases do I need to get rid of? How do I put myself in check? Most of us aren't reflecting that way.
Welcome to the Richie Huffman Podcast, where we discuss entrepreneurship, wealth creation, and getting the results that you've been looking for. Where we believe that hard work works. So let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back to the Richie Huffman Podcast. Today I spoke to one of my favorite authors, the author of The Wealthy Franchisee, Scott Greenberg. This was an amazing conversation because Scott actually was a previous franchisee, so he has the perspective of being a franchisee, but also what it takes and the mindset that is necessary to be successful in business. We really break it down from mindset and what others should be considering as they're looking at franchise opportunities for their families. I hope you enjoy the show. I'm one of your biggest fans, brother. I don't even know how I got your book, but when I got your book, The Wealthy Franchisee, it just impacted me in so many different ways. To the point where after every single meet the team day with our potential franchisees, I would run down to my office and grab several copies of your book and hand it out to our potential franchisees because the book, I just felt every single person that was looking to become a franchisee needed to read this book before they made their decision. That is kind of how impactful your book was to me. And then to come find out, my team comes to me right before our Celebrate FranCon and says, we're going to have Scott Greenberg be our main speaker at our conference. I'm like, how did we do this? Because they knew how much I enjoyed your book and how much of an impact your book had on us. So, Scott, welcome.
Thank you. And please don't let me interrupt. If you want to keep gushing about the book and my presentation, I'm happy to let you I don't want to interrupt your flow.
I want you to get in here and really talk to us, not only about your background, but how you actually came about or even what inspired you to even write this book, and then to go on and really become a public speaker on this knowledge that you've gained throughout many, many years.
Sure. Well, I actually did things in reverse order. I had been doing professional speaking, primarily motivational speaking and leadership training for 13, 14 years before getting into franchising. In my early 20s, I had a bout with cancer. It's a different story, but that experience led to what I thought would be a single one-off speech at a leadership conference. And I used my illness as a metaphor. We all experience adversity. What matters is what you do about it. That one speech led to continuing invitations for 30 years. But my messaging, my content has evolved significantly. And about 13, 14 years in, I decided I want another stream of income. And also, I wanted to make sure what I was saying on stage actually worked. I wanted some more real world experience if I'm going to talk about leadership. And I ended up, becoming a franchisee with edible arrangements, never leaving speaking, but wanting to get some real world experience, another stream of income, and realized a lot of what I was saying on stage didn't translate to the real world. So those stores became my laboratory, my place to try out concepts that I was sharing on stage. So I was already doing professional speaking for years before getting into franchising, but a lot of the concepts that I learned about or talked about, I tried to put into effect and really walk my talk. And, the two businesses are really great for each other.
And where'd that come from, Scott? How did you discover you wanted to be a motivational speaker?
When I was in high school, I was in student government and therefore had the opportunity to attend a lot of student leadership conferences. And that's where I heard my first motivational speakers. They just blew my mind. Other than coaches and teachers, I'd never really heard that before. And so there was a camp that I used to go to as a teenager. And then in college, I actually worked at that camp like as a counselor. So I had some contacts there. So that first speech was an invitation to come back to that very camp and be at the banquet and be their motivational speaker. And so I thought it'd be a one-off thing to find some meaning in my bout with cancer and how could I apply a lesson, for these other teenagers who are listening. And so I threw in some stories and some jokes, that kind of thing. And I started getting invitations to speak at high schools, to do school assemblies, 2,000 students in the gym with me and a microphone in the middle for an hour. And that's how I cut my teeth. It's the hardest audience you and yeah, and that the invitations kept coming. I got busier and made more money, and it built up from there. And it just evolved for several decades. So it's something very different now. But yeah, that's how I fell into it.
That's incredible. With an audience of 2,000 people, high schoolers, and a microphone.
Yeah, and high school kids, teenagers, they won't hold back. They will let you know in the moment how they feel.
I'm sure there wasn't a survey at the end that would have probably crippled you.
No, well, you don't need a survey.
Right.
They're telling you right there if you tell a joke, they laugh.
That's
if they
so
think
true.
You're full of it, they'll let you know.
That is so true. Well, thank you for that. And again, your book's been an inspiration to me, especially when we were literally thinking about franchising the Celebrity School brand here. But, a lot of our listeners are folks that are either already entrepreneurs or looking to become entrepreneurs on their own or through another franchise brand or franchise concept. So, I want to dive into just your experience and how you went about, choosing Edible Arrangements as the brand that you were going to invest in. I heard there's somewhere like 6,000 franchise brands out there available to folks. So how did you go about walking yourself through that process?
I'm going to answer your question, and the takeaway should be, this is what not to do. I don't regret Edible Arrangements. I made money during those years. I made money on my exit. It was a great experience for me. Out of luck. I mean, not that I didn't work hard, but I looked at one brand and one brand only. I had a thought in my head, which is, you know what? The speaking thing is great, but my wife and I are starting a family. I don't want to stop, but I want to travel a little bit less. I want another stream of income, and I want some real world business experience that I can, tap for material for my speeches. And then I saw an airline magazine ad for this franchise called Edible Arrangements and had a picture of this big, gorgeous floral display made out of fresh fruit. And I thought, well, we live in LA. There's tons of gift giving here. It's healthy. This looks cool. I'll check them out. I didn't look at any other brand, Richie, which was now, had I looked at many, I might have still made the choice. It wound up being really good. So I got so lucky that I just happened upon something that was a good fit for me. I would never advise anyone to do what I did, especially knowing what I've known today about how to really vet a franchise, because the messaging for most franchisors is the same. We're going to help your financial dreams come true. You'll be in business for yourself, but not by yourself. We've heard these things, and many times it's actually quite true. I know that your brand, you certainly deliver on your promises and provide a great opportunity for your franchisees. But they all sort of say the same thing. And now I know what to look for, what to be careful of, what the red flags are. So I would caution people to do something different compared to me, which is like, yeah, this is cool. I can do this. Where do I sign?
So let's unpack that a little bit. Again, with all your experience, what should the right path and what should potential families look for as they're exploring this opportunity?
I'm really big in all my talks to franchisees about understanding how they themselves are the biggest factor to determine how successful they will be or not be. More than location, more than specific products or services, or a business experience. It's you, the franchisee. So I advise a lot of franchisees to look in the mirror and realize your own biases, that kind of thing. And that starts with the vetting process. So for me, the problem was my impulsiveness. Right. I just kind of wanted to do it, and I was ready to kind of hunker down and not get the data. So what I tell franchisees is, first of all, take a deep breath and slow your roll. Like, don't let your excitement, your enthusiasm or the excitement and enthusiasm triggered by the franchisors want to sell to you. Don't give in to that. Get lots of information so you can confirm your choice or start to question your initial choices. And then I'll tell you some of the specific things that I guide prospective franchisees to look for. Um, Number one is who is the franchisor? Like, who is actually in charge? Is it a founder? Is it private equity? Is it, and there's advantages and disadvantages to all these things. But, when you sign a franchise agreement, you personally are there. But the other people on the other side, the franchisor, they might be changing. So get a sense of who's there and are these people you want to be in business with. Number two, unit level economics. Is the franchisor doing something to ensure that you're actually making bottom line profit, that there's money in your pocket, as opposed to just top line sales? A lot of franchisors don't have that conversation. They want to, they talk about marketing, they talk about sales, but actually walking away making a profit. So I like look for franchisors who do that and then ask questions. What do they do to help make sure that that takes place? Look at the culture of the brand, which is one area that I definitely want to compliment you on.
Thank you.
That the relationship between franchisees and franchisor and franchisees together. Are they collaborative, pulling their resources, right? Really working together to solve problems as opposed to dealing with internal problems, which I see so often in so many franchise brands. So what is the internal culture and what does the franchisor do to promote a great culture? So, those are some, I mean, there's other things, but those are some of like the really big things. And also, is this something they're even interested in? Is it something that you want to do? Something that you can have fun with? I think that's important.
Right. I couldn't agree with you anymore. I mean, you just hit probably the top three most important points. I always try to put myself in the other person's position, and I always say, if this is an industry that you know for a fact that you can be passionate about, in our case, early education, if this is a brand that you would be proud to be a part of, and is this an organization and an executive team? And you touched on this a little bit. Is this founder driven or is this PE driven? Um, but if this is the team, do you believe that this is the team that will be there to support you and help you and guide you along the way on this journey? So I think, in all of your experience, you kind of hit on the top three main ingredients that potential franchise partners should really, really take into consideration. So with that said, it's probably those three things that you just spoke about kind of was probably the synopsis of your book, right? So what really, and you touched on this a little bit, and this really what struck me on your book was that, regardless of the brand, and I think there's a lot of responsibility there of the brand, but it's really the mindset of that person and that franchise partner. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I really think that's what I took away in your book, the fact that everybody, we hope that everyone will follow let's say the recipe or the process, the guidelines of the franchisor, but it's how you go about delivering those process and experiences of the brand. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think the right mindset with the wrong opportunity is better than the wrong mindset with the best opportunity. So, I somewhere out there, I have an article. It's been published in a few places about, what to look for. And I think I have 5 or 6. I had just mentioned 3 for a great brand. You can find a brand that will check all the boxes, right? And have lots of franchisees who are just killing it, who are really just, doing very well. You can take that opportunity and lose so much money by getting in your own way, by coming into it with the wrong mindset. And so all the work that I do with franchisees, helping them grow their business, focuses some way on what I call the human side of franchising, the way we think, the way we lead, and the way we serve, right? I don't get as much into marketing, which is vitally important. I don't get as much into smart bookkeeping, the numbers, which are really, really important. It's mostly what you as the franchisee can do with great marketing, with the right opportunity to be great. And so there's a certain mindset that we need. And one of the things that defines the mindset of the profile of the wealthy franchisee, and by the way, I should define that term. A wealthy franchisee is someone who's making good money. They're in control of their time. They're not a slave of the business. and they enjoy a high quality of life with the business. You have to check all three to be a wealthy franchisee. And most brands have lots of wealthy franchisees. And so they're working hard. They have decent, not the best, but decent locations. But they bring that mindset. That's what they all have in common. So the first thing that defines the wealthy franchisee mindset is what I call clarity. They're not necessarily optimistic or positive. They're definitely not pessimistic or negative, but they keep a clear head so that they keep their emotions and their thoughts in check. So they don't give in to fear, but they also don't give in to too much enthusiasm. They're looking at the data, right? So I have a glass here, a breakfast smoothie, but if it was, the smoothie was this high, the optimist says that it is half full. Yeah, the pessimist says it's half empty. The wealthy franchisee said the glass has 4 ounces of smoothie. Like that is the clarity I'm talking about. What does the data tell us? Right? So they keep their thoughts and their emotions in check, not giving into fear, not giving into hype, not giving into too much enthusiasm. They keep a clear head and they make data-driven decisions. Another part of the wealthy franchisee mindset is a commitment to continuous improvement, always trying to get better. Even when you're ranked number 1 and you're the best, they want to get even better and beat themselves and, beat their own, but that also requires a bit of humility to say, you know what, I've got even more to learn and I have to grow. So part of continuous improvement, it's not just improving my sales, improving my team, improving my marketing, but improving me, improving the way I lead, making sure that I'm not getting complacent, making sure that I'm updating the way I lead, the way I market, because what works today is different than what worked yesterday, and tomorrow is also going to be different. So it requires curiosity and humility and a commitment to continuous improvement. I'll share one more quality of the wealthy franchisee mindset, and it's specific to franchising. They stick to the proven system. In my book, I profile all these wealthy franchisees. There's a lot of differences among them, but not one of them said, well, I enjoy the success I do because I deviate from the system. I mean, some of them have higher standards, right? But none of them have different standards or do things differently or go rogue. They've outsourced the creativity. They've outsourced the innovation. Richie, they want you to take the risk. So they let you do the research and development, let you figure it out. And then they stick to the system. Now, sometimes they might have questions and they might even disagree, but they're not disagreeable in discussing that with the franchisor. And together they work it out. But generally, they stick to that system and that partnership, they have a better relationship, so they get more support and better support. And usually the system is better than what people try to figure out on their own. Franchisors aren't perfect, but they have the most data. Spread out in lots of markets over a period of time, it's a much safer bet. You get into franchise to mitigate risk. You expose yourself to that risk as soon as you deviate from the system. So, they keep a clear head. They commit to continuous improvement. They're humble. They have that humility, and they stick to the proven system.
Yeah. Do you think most franchise partners that you've seen, Scott, can they recognize the fact that they're in a different mindset that's needed to be successful?
No.
Yeah. And there lies the challenge, right?
Yeah, and it's not that they resist it when it's pointed out. I mean, many do, but a lot of people, I see they're nodding their heads when I'm on stage and I'm making these points. A lot of people come up to me afterwards and said, I never really thought about what a difference I might be making. Right? They're so busy focusing on the operation, focusing on their employees who are driving them crazy, focusing on marketing, blaming the franchisor, that they don't really think much about themselves. Forget franchising. How about in any discipline? How often are all of us throughout the day thinking, wow, things are happening a certain way. I wonder what I can do to clear my head, to improve my mindset. We're too busy looking at our circumstances and looking at what we have to do, as opposed to also, hey, how do I have to think? What thoughts and biases do I need to get rid of? How do I put myself in check? Most of us aren't reflecting that way. But the reason why it comes through in a franchise system is because you have all these people doing the same thing and getting very different results. And, it's not just because of location as many would think. And lots of people say, well, my territory is different. No, it's not.
Yes.
Right. So you look at the variables that really matter. The biggest variable is the franchisee themselves. And so most people aren't thinking that way, but a lot of people are open to it once it's pointed out. And that's, a big message of mine when I'm on stage. And then there's some who want nothing to do with it. That's not true. It's not me. It's just about our corporate office. They have this policy. And I'm thinking, this is someone who just needs to get out of the system.
Yeah, they're the hardest. So what would you recommend in those lessons? It's funny you said that because I was thinking as you were giving us those 3 points is you could just you could literally take out the word franchisee and just put any word in there, right? The wealthy basically the wealthy person. So what you really were describing is what all successful, if you want to my definition of success, people in which the way that they live their lives.
Yeah, and the truth is, when I wrote The Wealthy Franchisee, my background originally before getting into business speaking was straight out motivational speaking. And motivation, these kinds of concepts still play a strong, role in my presentations. But honestly, I wrote the book as a personal growth book disguised as a business book because I think these things impact the bottom line. And I say this not as a motivational speaker. I say this as someone who had 10 years experience as a multi-unit franchisee, that these things matter. So that is really huge. But what is specific to franchising is there is a proven system.
True.
Like you need these characteristics if you want to open up your own business. That's independent, right? But there you're figuring out the system. When you're a franchisee, there is a proven system. There's a franchisor who is requiring you to meet certain standards, to do things a certain way. There are other people who are running the same business as you under the same branding. So you're representing them and they're representing you. So there are some things that are particular to franchising compared to other disciplines. And so my book really is about how to thrive there. But 90% of what's in the book, what's in my presentations, can be applied to other disciplines.
What would, let's say someone's listening to this and they totally agree on everything that we're talking about. What would their next steps be? Like where do they go from here? Where does this conversation and where does the rubber meet the road on the change that maybe is necessary?
Well, the first logical step is to hire me to speak to your organization and buy my book and get my consulting. That's a no-brainer, right? That's just basic logic. But I would say this, that if there is someone listening and they're a business owner and they think, wow, I really want to up my game, is to stop and reflect. What are your thoughts and what are your biases on any given day? What is your belief system? An exercise I might tell them is write down every thought you have about your business. And then go through each thing you wrote down and ask yourself, is that backed up with data? Is it based on fact or is it based on feeling?
So you're kind of validating your mindset.
Wealthy Franchisee Business Breakthrough Program. And one of the exercises I take people through in that course is just that, is you just list all these thoughts you have about your business. Then for each one, determine, is it based on fact or is it based on feeling? And if it's based on fact, okay, those are real issues we have to work with. But if they're based on feelings, what do the facts tell us? And what you'll find is a lot of what you believe about your business is subjective and it may not be true. So I'd say look at other franchisees in your system and what's their belief system? What is their take on these things? Are they going to agree that the franchisor is totally out of touch? Are they going to agree that it's all about location? And you can talk to them, get different perspectives besides your own, and be open to being wrong. Be open to the possibility that you might be part of the problem. And I never want anybody to feel insulted by that. People should feel empowered by that.
Totally.
That's true even with me with my speaking business. If I'm not hitting certain benchmarks, I'm not achieving my goals, I want it to be not because of the economy, not because of the competition. I want it to be because I'm doing something wrong. Because if I'm the source of the problem, well, I have control over that, right? And so part of it is accepting responsibility so that you can be empowered to take action. And for most business owners, there are opportunities completely within your control to level up, but you're not going to be able to seize those opportunities unless you're willing to look in the mirror objectively.
I love that. And then what? So you're basically asking me what is my mindset, right? What are my beliefs that are creating my mindset? Ask some others, maybe some of our franchise partners, maybe ask some key executives of their beliefs and the way they're viewing the company. And if there's some disconnect there, which I'm probably sure there is, What would step 3 be here?
Okay, so when my franchises started doing well, in the beginning they did not. I had a lot of self work to do myself and a lot that I had to learn, but we turned it around. And I started getting the phone calls. Hey, Scott, can I come by your store? What are you doing that you have such a great team or your sales are so good? And people were asking me those questions. They wanted to have what I had, they wanted to achieve what we were achieving. And I appreciated that. But I felt that most of the time people were asking the wrong questions. They were focusing on our location, focusing on our marketing. The question regarding, we had a great team, great management, a great team eventually. So people would ask the same question. Where are you finding such great people? They wanted to know my fishing spot, as opposed to, hey, Scott, what have you done to have more influence? What do you do to build culture? Right. And
Yeah.
so after you look in the mirror and realize, wow, there's places we can improve, that kind of thing, you want to ask better questions and ask, what action can you take? What thoughts can you change? What can you do differently in order to achieve it? The best thing to do is look at the people, the wealthy franchisees in your system, and then ask questions and replicate everything about them. You're not going to replicate their location, but you don't have to, right? You want to replicate their marketing. You want to replicate what they're looking for in employees, but then you want to replicate their mindset and their attitude and their relationship with the franchisor and their belief system and the way they deal with problems,
Totally.
right? All of that kind of stuff. And again, no one ever asked me, hey, Scott, how do you get through tough times? How do you cope when it gets stressful? What do you do to build culture? What do you do to be more influential? Um, you know, instead of saying, hey, what do you think of the franchisor? And they're looking for confirmation bias, me to confirm that the franchisor sucks. I'd say ask the same question, but with more curiosity. What do you think of the franchisor? What do you think of what they're saying? And really come with a place of curiosity. So, and you want to replicate everything about them. And if you do what they do and how they think, you're much more likely than to replicate their results.
That is powerful, brother. Because everybody, to your point, everybody's looking for that one magic silver bullet, and there is not one.
Yeah, and they think it's marketing, right? Or they think it's location, or they think, and of course those things matter.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people with a great location who are marketing really well, but they're not executing at a higher level because they're missing this wealthy franchisee way of thinking.
Yeah. Everything matters. Everything matters. Not just marketing, not just the way we put the baskets together. Everything matters.
Yeah, Richie, if you have some awesome recipe, which in your franchise you actually do, but if you have some great recipe for a food and I want to replicate it, I can't exclude certain ingredients or swap out ingredients because I think here salt will be better than sugar. Like, as soon as you do that, you're deviating from what works. So you have to copy every ingredient of that recipe for success and their mindset and the way they build culture, the way they think, the way they lead, the way they serve, the way they partner with the franchisor. These are necessary ingredients in that recipe.
I love that. And the first thing I think about, when we started, I always say this all the time, in our hearts of hearts, we're really preschool providers. And in 2019, when we decided to open this opportunity up to other families, I said, this is going to be a true partnership. We are not going to behave. And this goes back to your thoughts of our mindset. This is not going to be a mindset of we're the franchisor and they are the franchisee. We are not going to have that mindset. We are not going to speak that language because as you speak, you believe and you behave. And our franchise, I was about to say it. We call them franchise partners because they are partners. And as we view them as partners, we will treat them like partners, and we will act as if we are partners, in which we are. So I couldn't agree with you more on the power of the mindset, and that mindset, as we talked about today, can come in so many different ways of how to establish that mindset. But it all boils down to that.
Well, I would have titled my book The Wealthy Franchise Partner, but that URL wasn't available. But thewealthyfranchisee.com was, so I grabbed it.
Well, maybe we can do something together, and I can, maybe be the co-author.
Sure. Why not? Let's go for it.
Scott, I'm so happy that we became friends. I'm so feel blessed of this partnership that we have. Your book impacted me, and I know your book, The Wealthy Franchisee, is impacting many, many others. So, brother, thank you for all the good work you're doing, and thank you for being a friend.
This has been such a treat, and it's been great getting to know you and becoming friends for sure.
Thank you, Scott. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast. Don't forget to follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Richie Huffman Celebrate and TikTok at Richie Huffman 01. We've got more great episodes lined up for you, so check back with us soon. Until then, remember, hard work works.